Picture the scene, the deafening roar of 50,000 spectators in the Colosseum, the blazing Mediterranean sun beating down on the sand of the arena. Two figures, armed and armored, circle each other. One holds a net and trident, the other a shield and a short sword. This is the image of the gladiator, a brutal, bloody, and glorious spectacle of life and death for public entertainment. It's the moment Hollywood has shown us 100 times. But what about the day before? What about the endless, monotonous Tuesdays and Wednesdays that led to this single moment of violent glory? What did a gladiator eat for breakfast? Who stitched his wounds after a training session went wrong? What did his world look like when the crowds were gone and the only sound was the echo of his own breathing in a cold stone cell? To understand the gladiator, we must look past the arena and focus on the grueling, micromanaged, and almost factory-like process that created him. Because a gladiator was not just a man, he was a product. He was an incredibly valuable, high-performance asset, owned by a businessman called a lanista. Like a modern-day prize fighter or a thoroughbred racehorse, his entire existence was controlled, monitored, and optimized for peak performance and durability. His life was a routine, an insane routine, designed to forge a human weapon while protecting a massive financial investment. So in this video, we are going to pull back the curtain on the spectacle and step inside the imposing walls of a Roman gladiator school, a ludus. We're going to spend a day in the life of one of these fighters, from the first light of dawn to the exhausted darkness of night. We'll uncover their strange diet, their brutal but methodical training, their unique social order, and the bizarre paradox of being both a condemned slave and a celebrated superstar. This is the story of the 99% of a gladiator's life that was lived in the shadow of the Colosseum. A gladiator's day begins not with the trumpet's call, but in the cold, quiet darkness before dawn. Life inside the ludus was Spartan. The fighters slept in small, simple cells, often 2 or 3 men to a room, on basic straw mattresses. There was no luxury here, only function. The first order of business was the morning meal, and it was here that one of the biggest secrets to a gladiator's survival was found. A secret that completely shatters our modern image of a chiseled athlete. Gladiators were often insultingly nicknamed hordeari, which literally means the barley men. This was because their diet was a deliberately bland, incredibly high carbohydrate regimen. Forget lean proteins and low-fat meals. A gladiator's breakfast, lunch, and dinner consisted largely of barley, beans, oats, and ash. Yes, ash was sometimes added to their food as a mineral supplement, providing calcium for bone strength. This carb-heavy diet had a very specific purpose. It was designed to make them gain weight. The goal was not to create a lean, ripped physique, but to build a substantial layer of subcutaneous fat over their muscles. Why? It was a gruesome but practical form of armor. This layer of fat acted as a protective cushion. In the arena, a shallow cut that might sever a crucial muscle or nerve on a lean man would instead result in a bloody but non-critical flesh wound on a bulked-up gladiator. This had 2 benefits. First, it made the fights more spectacular for the crowd, more blood without ending the match too quickly. Second, and far more importantly for the lanista, it protected his valuable investment from being permanently damaged or killed by a superficial strike. This obsession with protecting the asset extended to their medical care. In one of history's great ironies, these slaves and condemned criminals received some of the most advanced medical treatment available in the Roman world. The ludus employed skilled doctors, or medici, who specialized in surgery and physical therapy. The legendary physician Galen, whose medical texts would be the standard in Europe for over 1,000 years, began his career as a doctor at a gladiator school. Wounds were expertly stitched, broken bones were carefully set, and their health was constantly monitored. This wasn't an act of kindness, it was business. A gladiator's body was a machine, and this was its high-performance maintenance schedule. With the body fueled, the real work began. The heart of the ludus was the training ground, a dusty courtyard where men were systematically broken down and rebuilt into killing machines. This process was overseen by a man known as the doctor, not a physician, but the head trainer. The doctor was usually a retired champion gladiator who had earned his freedom, a master of a specific fighting style who now drilled his expertise into a new generation. He was the coach, drill sergeant, and strategist, all rolled into one, and his word was law. The training itself was a science. New recruits and even veterans in their daily drills did not use the sharpened steel weapons of the arena. That would be foolishly risking the Lannister's investment. Instead, they trained with wooden swords called a ludus. But these were no mere toys. In a brilliant stroke of conditioning, the training weapons were often deliberately made to be twice as heavy as their real-life counterparts. The gladiator would spend hours a day swinging a weighted sword and blocking with a heavy wicker shield. The sheer exhaustion built muscle and stamina, but more importantly, it made his movements brutally efficient. When the day of the games finally arrived and he was handed a real, lighter steel gladius, it would feel like a feather in his hand, allowing for a speed and ferocity his opponent might not be prepared for. The centerpiece of this grueling regimen was the palus, a thick wooden stake about 6 feet tall, driven firmly into the ground. This was the gladiator's silent, unyielding opponent. For hours on end, a fighter would attack the palus, practicing his footwork, perfecting the angle of his strikes and mastering the art of blocking and parrying. It was a monotonous, soul-crushing drill, the ancient equivalent of a boxer working a heavy bag. Every movement was repeated thousands of times until it became pure, unthinking instinct. And this training was highly specialized. Gladiator was not a single style. A nimble retiarius who fought with a net and trident had a completely different set of skills to learn than the heavily armored secutor who was his natural opponent. A thraex, with his curved blade and small square shield, trained differently from a mumio, with his large shield and fish-crested helmet. Each doctor was a specialist, and he would drill his students relentlessly in the specific techniques that gave them an edge, preparing them not just to fight, but to win in the deadly chess match of the arena. As the punishing midday training wound down, the physical exhaustion was replaced by the tense reality of life within the barracks. The ludus was a strange and contradictory environment, part elite training facility, part maximum security prison. Gladiators were not free men. They could not leave. The entire compound was walled, gated, and patrolled by armed guards to prevent the Lannisters' valuable assets from escaping. Within these walls, life was governed by a rigid and unforgiving hierarchy. At the top was the Lannister, the owner, who held the absolute power of life and death. Below him were the doctores, the trainers who enforced his will. Veteran gladiators with successful careers held seniority over the tirones, the new recruits who had to earn their place through sweat and submission. Discipline was everything. Any infraction, from laziness in training to disrespect, could be met with harsh punishment. This could range from a brutal whipping to being shackled in a dark cell. This constant oppressive discipline was a reminder of their status. They were property, and their lives were not their own. Yet out of this grim reality, something extraordinary emerged. A powerful sense of community. Despite being trained to one day potentially kill each other, the men of the ludus formed an intense brotherhood known as the Familia Gladiatoria, the gladiator family. They lived together, ate the same monotonous food together, endured the same pain under the watch of the doctor, and faced the same terrifying fate. This shared struggle forged bonds of loyalty and camaraderie that were almost unbreakable. One of the most poignant examples of this brotherhood was the formation of funerary colleges, or burial societies. Gladiators would often pool what little prize money they earned to ensure that their fallen comrades received a dignified end. If a member of their familia was killed in the arena, the college would pay for a proper burial and a tombstone, saving him from the dishonor of being dumped in a common pit. These tombstones tell heartbreaking stories, often listing a gladiator's name, his fighting style, his record of wins, and a tribute from the friend who buried him. It was their way of screaming into the void of history that they existed, that they had a name, and that they mattered to someone, even in a life that treated them as disposable. The evening would be spent in this tense community, maintaining gear, getting muscles massaged with oil by slaves, and eating another bland meal before collapsing into an exhausted sleep, ready to do it all over again. This entire brutal routine, the barley diet, the weighted swords, the endless drills, was all a prelude to the main event, the Munera, the public games. When a gladiator was selected to fight, he would leave the monotonous grey world of the ludus and step into the blinding light of the arena. And in that moment, a bizarre transformation occurred. The condemned slave, the piece of property, became something else entirely, a superstar. This is the central paradox of the gladiator. On one hand, they were legally classified as infamia, a status of disgrace that placed them at the very bottom of the social ladder, alongside prostitutes and actors. They had no rights. They were social outcasts. Yet on the other hand, successful gladiators were the most famous celebrities in the Roman world. They were the premier athletes, the rock stars of their age. Schoolboys would scrawl the names of their favorite fighters on public walls. Graffiti from Pompeii reads, "Celadus the Thracian, the sigh of all the girls." Children played with clay gladiator action figures. Their images were immortalized in expensive mosaics, on household lamps, and in fine pottery. They were the ultimate symbols of masculine virtue, courage, and martial skill, admired by everyone from commoners to noblewomen. This celebrity status played into the arena itself and busts another common myth: not every fight was to the death. A skilled, popular gladiator was an incredibly valuable asset. A lanista could rent out his champion for a fortune, and he didn't want that investment killed off recklessly. Many matches had a referee and ended when one fighter surrendered by raising a single finger or was too wounded to continue. The final decision of life or death, the missio, often fell to the sponsor of the games, who would read the mood of the crowd. If a gladiator had fought bravely and was popular, he was often spared to fight another day. But the risk of death was always present. A poor showing, an unforgiving crowd, or games sponsored by an emperor who demanded blood could easily seal a loser's fate. So, what were they fighting for, beyond just survival? The ultimate prize was a glimmer of hope, freedom. After years of surviving in the arena, a gladiator of great skill and renown could be awarded the rudis, a simple wooden sword. This was the symbol of his discharge. It meant his contract was fulfilled. He was a free man. He could walk out of the ludus forever. This slim, almost impossible dream of earning the rudis was the ultimate motivation, the light at the end of a very long, dark, and bloody tunnel that made the entire insane routine worthwhile. So the life of a Roman gladiator was a tapestry of brutal contradictions. He was a prisoner, living under the strictest discipline, yet part of a loyal brotherhood. He was a social outcast, yet an idolized celebrity. He was fed a bland diet fit for livestock, yet received medical care that a nobleman might envy. He was a disposable entertainer in a blood sport, yet a priceless asset protected at all costs. The insanity of his routine was not chaos, but a chillingly logical and methodical system. It was a production line designed to strip a man of his former identity and forge him into a living spectacle. The routine was the engine of this transformation. the monotonous diet, the repetitive violence against the training post, the rigid daily schedule, it was all designed to erase the individual and create a reliable, predictable, and profitable fighter. But through it all, their humanity stubbornly remained. We see it in their desire for dignity, pooling their money to give a fallen friend a proper burial so his name would not be forgotten. We see it in their pride, carving their victories onto walls and cherishing their fame. And we see it in their desperate universal hope for freedom, embodied in that simple wooden sword. The gladiator is more than a symbol of Rome's thirst for violent entertainment. He is a testament to a complex and ruthless system of exploitation, but also a symbol of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. They were men forced to live by a routine designed to turn them into objects, who still managed to build families, create a culture of honor, and dream of a life beyond the arena walls. The sand of the Colosseum may have been soaked in blood, but the long, hard life that led a man there was soaked in sweat, discipline, and a desperate, defiant hope. So what part of the gladiators' daily routine surprised you the most? Was it the barley men diet for protection, the elite medical care, or their paradoxical status as slave superstars? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look into the hidden life of a Roman gladiator, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the ancient world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.